Hi everyone, to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making lamb Youvetsi. It's a lamb and orzo stew that is so hearty and delicious. It's really nice to serve to the family, or if you're looking for something elegant to make for the holiday season or for a special dinner party, this is it. I've done this recipe in the past, but I'm tweaking it a little bit just to make it a little bit easier and even more flavorful. You're going to really love this one. Let's get started. So I'm using lamb shanks today. I have these 6 beautiful lamb shanks. You can use beef if you want, or any other cut of lamb will work for this. I've even done this with chicken, but today we're using lamb, and I'm gonna roast them in the oven to kind of brown them. You can do it over the stovetop, but they do splatter all over the place. Takes a lot of time, and again, it makes a mess. So I'm gonna do it in the oven. It's a nice trick that I've learned. Before you do that, just season them on both sides with some salt and black pepper. No oil is needed because they have a lot of natural fat. And I love using lamb shanks for this recipe because they just go so well with all the nice flavors that are in this dish. We're gonna add some cinnamon and cloves and tomatoes, and it's perfect for the cold weather. It's a nice hearty stew. So my oven is preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. They're just gonna go in the oven and they're gonna roast in there for about 30 or 35 minutes. While the lamb shanks are roasting, we're gonna make the braising sauce, and it's so easy to do. So we're just gonna go ahead and finely chop an onion and add it to a saucepan. So add about 3-4 tablespoons of olive oil, not too much because the lamb is going to release a lot of fat, so you don't want your dish to be too greasy. Season with a little pinch of salt. Now at this point, you could also chop up 2 carrots and maybe a celery, and you could throw those in there. I'm gonna leave them out because I think it has enough flavor, but that is an option. And I'm just gonna cook the onions until they're nice and soft and golden. That's gonna take about 7 or 8 minutes or so. All right, next go ahead and grate about 5 or 6 garlic cloves and add them in there. And they're just gonna have to warm through if they're grated, so that way they don't burn. That's just gonna take a few seconds until they're nice and fragrant. Then I have 2 15-ounce cans of pureed or crushed tomatoes. You could even use diced tomatoes, that would work too. Just go ahead and puree them if you're not a fan of having chunky bits of tomatoes in your food. My kids don't like to see them, so I always puree. Some crushed red pepper flakes, black pepper. I had to take it off the heat because the tomato sauce is flying all over the place because the pan was super hot. But I'm gonna season it and then put it back on and let it come to a boil. I'm also gonna add a cinnamon stick, a few cloves, maybe 3 or 4, and a bay leaf. And then 4 cups of water. You can use chicken broth if you want, or beef broth, or even a vegetable broth. And you're just gonna bring this mixture to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, take it off of the heat, and then as soon as the lamb shanks come out of the oven, you're just gonna go ahead and pour this delicious sauce on top of them. Okay, so as soon as the lamb comes out of the oven, like we said, pour all of the sauce over it and then cover it with a piece of parchment paper. I like to crumble up the parchment paper first and then put it over the lamb so that way it kind of stays in place. And then on top of the parchment paper, I like to cover the pan tightly with a sheet of aluminum foil. It's gonna go back into the oven. This time I'm gonna reduce the temperature to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's gonna bake for between 2 to 2.5 hours, or until the meat is soft and tender and basically falling off of the bone. You want this to cook so it could be nice and light and basically should melt in your mouth. I've said this so many times in previous videos. My oven here in America bakes very differently from the one that I use in my parents' house in Greece. If I were to bake at 475 degrees in Greece, it would probably burn the meat. So use your judgment and go according to your oven's baking temperature, and you should be fine. If the heat is too high, obviously reduce it. I've read many comments where the heat in your oven is a little bit higher than usual, so just reduce it, it's fine. So it's gonna bake in there for about 2 to 2.5 hours, then we're gonna go in and add the orzo. So check your lamb at the 2-hour mark, and if it's falling off the bone, then it's time to add the orzo pasta to the dish or to the pan. Now, I only had 1/2 pound of orzo pasta in my pantry, and I was thinking, what should I do? What should I do? That would not have been enough for this much lamb. So I did have some vermicelli pasta. Elbow pasta is also really good. Basically, any small pasta will do. Even the little shell pasta, I believe they're called orecchiette. Any pasta will do in this dish. Just go ahead and add it. I just use a combination of vermicelli, you know, the pasta that you use to make the Mediterranean rice pilaf, along with the orzo, and I added it to the pan along with a couple more cups of water. Now, if you have a bigger pan, which I do recommend that you use, this one barely fit everything, you're gonna basically need to cover the meat and the orzo so that way it absorbs enough water and cooks properly. I did go ahead and I seasoned it with a little bit more salt, pepper. I added about 1.5 teaspoons of salt so that way the orzo gets nice and flavorful, and I did add some more black pepper along with a heaping teaspoon of dried oregano. I used to add oregano to the braising sauce, but sometimes it tends to add too much bitterness to the sauce, so I like to add it at the end. Then go ahead and cover the pan again and put it back in the oven, and this time bake it at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, covered for 20 minutes, then uncover it and bake it for another 10 or 15 minutes. Take it out of the oven, and then something unusual that you normally don't do once you take roasted dishes out of the oven, I like to add a glass full of ice to it because it'll stop the cooking process. You don't want the orzo to get mushy. It's gonna look like there's a lot of sauce in there, but orzo absorbs it so quickly, and you just do want to have a little bit of sauce left over. At this point, you could just plate it and serve it. I like to crumble some feta on top. You can do Parmesan cheese, kefalotiri, Gruyere cheese or graviera, whatever you want, maybe a little bit of parsley, it's up to you, and then you just go ahead and serve it with a nice salad. That's all you need. It's time for the taste test. This takes me back to my childhood and gives me so much comfort. So delicious. That sauce is so rich and flavorful. The lamb melts in your mouth because it falls off the bone. So good. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I do have a version of Youvetsi that you can make in the Instant Pot, so click over here if you want to watch that one. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.